Hey, what's up, guys? Love the show. I just wanted to put in my prediction for future updates. So here's what I'm thinking. Much like how Smart Invert teased the dark mode last year as an accessibility option, we now have mouse and trackpad support as an accessibility option in iOS 13. I expect to see full mouse support integrated into iOS in a future version, and I would even go as far as to say that a future version of the smart keyboard will include a trackpad built in. Mark my words, guys, alright? Thanks, and keep up the good work.
Man, it's nice to get a listener message, hey? That's our very first one.
A very complimentary one at that.
Yeah, we'll take more of those, especially complimentary ones.
Yeah.
Man, a smart keyboard with a trackpad is something that I have often imagined, but I just didn't ever see it happening just because of the lack of mouse support. I didn't see that ever coming to the iPad, but now that it's there as an accessibility feature, then surely it's on the horizon.
I think Isaac is completely on the right track here with this. Not only that, I think we're going to see in the coming years, maybe not the next version of iPad OS, but a couple years out, like more fully fledged desktop support where you can dock your iPad to a monitor and connect a Bluetooth keyboard and mouse and have maybe not Mac OS running, but an even more powerful version of iOS, and apps can take advantage of this display and precision input, similar to Samsung DeX.
Yeah, exactly. It's that dream of having the dockable computer that's also 100% portable. I wonder, where does it end? Like, the crossover between iPad OS and Mac OS on a laptop it can't be too far into the future before they're... No. I'm going to backtrack on this. They're never going to be, like, completely interchangeable, are they? I guess it's just the use case. But eventually, iPad OS is going to be so powerful that the use case for Mac OS is going to be, like, trimmed down year after year, trimmed down until it really is something very unique that the iPad OS can't offer.
Right. Yeah, even as is, iPad OS already covers almost all consumer use cases. It's just the pro development, especially things like software and high-end video and stuff like that. But for most cases, iPad already does that. And I think, in the coming years, we'll see that more and more.
How long is it before we have like racks filled with iPads running virtualized environments of iPad OS? I think we're a long way out.
Yeah, I don't know about that. It would be cool to see if it becomes an extremely viable and popular operating system, the ability for like a rack-mounted Mac to run a virtualized iPad OS.
Well, thanks for the voice messages. We'll take any more like that. We'll be happy to listen to any listener input. How can people send us voice messages, David?
I was about to
You're
say,
full bottle on this.
The ad campaign has ended, so there won't be an ad specifically for this, but it's the Anchor voice messages. There should be a link in the show description that you can follow, or just find our show on the Anchor app itself, and you can send us voice messages through there.
Right.
So I sent you that the picture that I bought, the little square centimeter of Steve Jobs turtleneck.
You did, yeah.
Just because I thought it was ridiculous, and it wasn't like so expensive. It was like out of the realm of, it was like $20 or $30, and so I got that, and I got my his actual frames that I went out of my way to get a year or so ago.
Yeah, right. The German ones.
Yeah, so I have those next to each other, and I've been working on putting together. I want to have like a shelf or a display.
Do you mean
like,
shrine?
Not a shrine, but like a timeline.
Okay.
Of like Steve Jobs, like I'd say like tentpole achievements. So I have like the Macintosh. I've got that. I need to get a Next Cube. That's going to be the most insanely expensive thing to find, though. A Next Cube, the original iMac, iPod, iPhone, iPad. I've got like the original iPad and original iPhone, and I've got some G3 iMacs, but not the original one. And I've got an original Macintosh. So I really just need to get like a first generation iPod and maybe not worry about the next cube because those are going to be thousands of dollars. But I thought it'd be cool to put like a little timeline up like that for my collection.
Yeah, that sounds really nice. What about throw some books in there as well? Some of the biographies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have like the Walter Isaacson biography.
Yeah.
And then the allegedly better becoming Steve Jobs biography.
Allegedly.
Well, so it seemed like on all accounts it was better received initially. And then some of the people that worked with him, like I think Phil Schiller and maybe even Tim Cook at some point came out and said like none of these biographies are very accurate and they didn't really capture who Steve was. And that might just be Apple trying to preserve his legacy in some way. But I don't know who to trust. And I actually haven't read the Becoming Steve Jobs yet. I've only read the Walter Isaacson biography.
I have both, and it was a long time ago that I've read them, but I remember enjoying the one by Walter Isaacson a lot more.
Really?
Yeah, that's not a testament to how accurate it is, of course, but yeah, I did enjoy it a lot.
I remember it was pretty close to the end of that biography. Steve was talking about how he had finally cracked how to make TV good. And I feel like that vision died with him because we sure haven't seen it yet.
So true. Maybe he was talking about picture-in-picture, which has just kind of come out with the latest beta.
That's a big deal. I'm surprised they didn't at least mention it in the keynote.
I know. Was it on one of those word clouds? I don't remember it. Was there even a word cloud for the Apple TV?
I don't think so. I'm sure if it was on there, we would have seen headlines about it before Beta 2.
Yeah, probably.
So, but yeah, that's super exciting.
Yeah, okay. I look forward to seeing some pictures of your... I'm going to keep calling it a shrine. As you work towards full completion.
I got to find a nice iPod. It's hard to get a first generation iPod in good condition because it's either still in box and someone wants like $20,000 for it, or it's like old and beat up and doesn't even turn on anymore
and has no click wheel anymore.
Right?
Yeah. I can donate an old iPhone 3G if you want. Locked to an older relative's iCloud account, which can never be unlocked.
I mean, maybe I could do a display of iPhones. I've got the first generation, the 3GS, the 4, and the 5. So I do have some missing spots, but I don't know if I'm going to ever seek out all of them or not. It might be cool to do, especially now they're getting cheaper.
It could be one of those tasks that is like a job that's never finished. Like, oh, I've got, I've got an iPhone 3GS, but, it has this tiny imperfection, and I really need to have, like, the perfect collection. And then you spend your whole life working on it. It could drive you crazy. I'm just warning you that this could be an insanity task.
I do have a collection of all, like, new in box, every generation of the iPod Shuffle. And that's the only complete collection I have of anything.
New in box. That's good. I like that.
Yeah, it's kind of... And they were all cheap. Like, even... I mean, I think the most expensive one was the one I bought brand new for $50, and everything after that was like $20 or something.
Really? Okay. So this is not as they just came out then, I guess, because they were a bit more than that when they came out.
No. Yeah, I got the last generation of Shuffle. I bought it the day they discontinued the iPod. Actually, for my YouTube channels during the time, I went out and I bought the Shuffle and Nano to do kind of like a I don't even know, end of life review for them. And then I just happened to collect the other ones over time from rogue eBay listings or finding them or something. I don't even know how I ended up with all of them. But
speaking of your YouTube channel, it has had a recent upload. It's kind of tech adjacent, sneakerheadish.
Yeah, I bought the self-lacing shoes, and I really haven't. I do love them. I when I bought them, I was questioning if they were worth keeping or if I was just going to try to sell them because they were selling for a bit more than I got them for on the used market. But after wearing them for a while, I've really fallen in love with them, and I'm very happy with that purchase.
Okay, so you're wearing them day in, day out? Or is it more of a special occasion shoe?
It's only like if the weather is perfect, because I'm still kind of scared to wear them like if it's wet or raining or anything like that. But generally I wear them most days. I definitely take more care of them than I have any other pair of shoes. Like I'll make sure at the end of the day to flip them over and pick all the little rocks out of the tread in the bottom, and I'll make sure to like rub any dirt off before I put them up on their charger for the night.
We live in a new world, don't we? Where your shoes go on a charger at the end of the day. You'd have to pick the stuff out though, because you wouldn't want to scratch up that nice charger. And I was a bit worried when I started watching your video. Actually, it was... did you leave it at this point where one of the shoes wasn't actually powering on from out of the box? And so it came with so little charge that it seemed to be a defective shoe.
Right, yeah. The first one turned on and it paired with my phone just fine. And the second one wouldn't turn at all. I set it on its charger for a little while and it still wasn't turning on. I was like, oh, this sucks because it's a limited run. I'm not going to be able to get it replaced or whatever. But after leaving it on there for, I don't know, probably a good 10 to 15 minutes, it finally showed some signs of life. And unfortunately, immediately after that, we were on our way out the door to travel a few hours away to visit my family for the weekend. And so I was actually holding up us leaving to unbox and play with these shoes. And then, so I didn't get to wear them at all. I put them on the charger and started playing. I'm like, okay, well, I got to go. So I left and actually edited together the video and uploaded it on my phone on the trip up there.
Oh, serious?
So,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Did you use iMovie?
I did. That's the first time I used iMovie on the phone since it came out, and I was happy enough with it. I just put a couple clips back to back and hit upload, and that worked just fine for that. So yeah, so far they've been great. I thought it was going to be more of a gimmick. It ended up being the convenience of sliding your shoe on and it tying itself and just being able to go. I quickly grew accustomed to it, and I like it quite a bit.
Right, yeah. So this one of those things actually sounds kind of ridiculous, but then once you get used to it, it's like you're looking down on all of us poor people with manual lacing shoes.
Yeah. So I wore them to work, and I've worn them around town, and I never really got any comments except from my coworkers who knew I had pre-ordered them and saw them. But then I went to a bigger city. Actually, it was when I was getting my iPad Pro. I had to drive an hour away to go pick it up because the Best Buy in town didn't have any in the capacity I wanted. So I had to drive an hour away to get one. And I walked in that Best Buy, and every single employee in that store immediately recognized my shoes and was so excited that I got them.
What is it with Best Buy? And I mean, we don't have Best Buy here. Is it just employing sneakerheads?
I think it was just that one store. It was a store of sneakerheads, and everyone immediately knew what it was. And it was crazy.
So you're like a celebrity walking into Best Buy.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Bet that felt good.
I felt pretty big there. And then at work, everyone kind of makes fun of them, actually.
Of course, that's what you have to do to your coworkers, though.
The issue with these shoes is the lacing and unlacing mechanism is surprisingly loud, and it runs for longer than you'd expect. Like in the Back to the Future movie, he'd slide his foot in the shoe and just do zoop, and then they're tightened. Whereas if you in these shoes, if you try to tie them or untie them, you put your foot in, it goes.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's a little annoying and very loud, surprisingly loud.
It's like a tiny electric motor with no torque, just spinning like a massive cog for ages by the sound of it.
That's exactly what it is, yeah. So it's kind of a cool engineering feat. They've got a single servo in the center of the shoe that's able to tighten it all at once versus their original design from a few years ago that had multiple motors for each loop of the lace or whatever.
Maybe multiple motors could have got away with doing it a bit quicker, though.
Yeah,
more torque overall.
Yeah, that would have been probably better.
Are you going to do a follow-up review video on your channel?
I could. I don't know much what I'd say about him. I'm not actually trying to actively maintain that channel. It's just I got the shoes. I'm like, these are kind of a rare thing that some people are probably gonna be interested in seeing. So I should like just show a video of what the unboxing experience is like. And surprisingly intricate for a pair of shoes. The type of packaging they had. But I don't know if I'm actually interested in maintaining that channel in any way besides throwing up rogue videos of me smashing iPads and stuff. I was just watching one of your videos as well. It was he was comparing the image quality of a couple point and shoots. I don't remember what they were. Some older point and shoots.
Yeah, I've had a small addiction problem with like 1990s and 1980s point and shoot cameras just for the last few months. So I figured I'd like work out which one of them is best and let people know.
I was disappointed because I saw your. I don't remember any of the names of these cameras, but you had like the first one that you said was like the first point and shoot that had like a little lever to do your half shutter press.
Right, the Canon Auto Boy or something like that.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. And the next video, like, I got rid of it because it was annoying. And I was like, oh, man.
But the one I replaced it with is almost identical. It just has like the focus lock with the half press of the shutter button instead of the stupid lever. But it looks almost identical.
Quirks like that are the coolest thing, though.
Oh, really? Sorry.
I think so. But you're definitely have a. If I'm the one with the better ear, you're the one with the better eye. Because in your photo comparisons, you're like, you put the two photos up next to each other, and you say, like, see how much better this one is than this one? I'm like, they look exactly the same to me, James.
If that was the video you watched, admittedly, the photos did look extremely similar. You really had to analyze them to find some sort of difference. So I won't blame you on that. Well, good morning. Welcome to the r/Apple Show.
Thanks. Good morning to you, James.
Thank you for the greeting. For anyone new, we might have a few new listeners because we had a pretty popular show last week. We just talk about the top posts on the Apple subreddit for the last week or two, or since we last did the show. And as you might guess, most of our topics are like post WWDC related, as I expect they will be for maybe the near future as well.
Yeah, which I'm completely fine with because we definitely didn't have enough time to get through everything on the last show.
We spent like 2 minutes on the Mac Pro, if that. It was we raced through incredibly fast, as with most topics, but we'll have a little bit more time today.
Yeah.
And first off the bat is iOS 13 Beta 2 is coming today for developers ahead of public beta release. This was a couple of days ago, so developers at this point should already have Beta 2 installed on their devices. It came as an over-the-air update instead of an IPSW file, which is nice. And it probably means that the public beta is right around the corner. And that's actually what I'm going to hang out for. I'm not going to get on the developer beta train this year.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Mainly because I don't have a paid developer account anymore. So I'm not maintaining any apps. So,
well, now that the profile's out, you don't need it. But
so yeah, you don't need the paid developer account, but you kind of should have it, is the way I'm seeing it.
Yeah. That's fair.
What's your situation? Do you have a paid developer account, or do you have one at work you can just make use of?
Oh, man. I do have one at work, and I spent $100 to get an account, a personal account, when Beta 1 launched. I didn't even think about using my work account.
Sorry to tell you. Sorry.
That's fine. I'm actually working on an app that I'm planning on. Well, probably now waiting until iOS 13's launched, but then
yeah, for sure,
uploading. So I need an account anyway. But
okay, you'll have to add me to it.
Oh, to the test flight or to what?
Oh, to both. Yeah, get me on the test flight for your app if it's if you need testers, and also get me that sweet developer profile.
I can send you one. I don't know how well you're gonna be able to test the app. It's specifically for people who sing barbershop music.
Yeah, I can get on board that. You know, I've taken vocal lessons in the past, so I mean, it's just a small step from knowing next to nothing about music to singing barbershop. I expect.
So it's kind of cool. It's a app that you can maintain your repertoire of like what songs you know and what parts of the song you know. And then when you're at like our conventions or district competitions or things like that, you can find a group of people and you can all add each other in the app, and it'll say these are the songs you guys all know all the parts to, and so you can sing together that way.
Nice. So it's like a meetup for barbershop. Meetup facilitator.
Yeah. So it's a I haven't announced this yet, but it's called PD Quartet. So a pretty darn quick quartet.
That's a good name.
So it's just a way for people to establish a common repertoire quickly when you're with a group of people you've never met or sang with before.
Well, this is an unexpected segue, isn't it? Well, I'm glad we can announce this app on the show.
Yeah, sure. Any barbershop singers who also intersect with interested in listening to the Apple Subreddit podcast.
Yeah, I'm not sure
now they know.
That segment of the Venn diagram is going to be too big, but hey, you never know.
But as far as the beta goes, I've been running beta 2 since it came out, and it does seem more stable than beta 1 was.
You would hope.
Encountered less
although not
resprings.
Always the case, but you'd hope.
Still having some Bluetooth issues, and I assume it's related to the new permissions in iOS 13. Specifically, I got a dash cam from my car recently that pairs with an app via Bluetooth, and I can't get it to pair. So,
does it pair for the purpose of file sharing?
Mm-hmm.
That sounds terrible.
Well, I assume, and I'm not positive on this, but I would hope that once a connection is established, it would hopefully share those like over Wi-Fi or something. Like
yeah. Hopefully,
Wi-Fi
Bluetooth
connection
is the facilitator for a Wi-Fi connection, like a
right.
What do you call it? Point-to-point Wi-Fi. Because Bluetooth is like not a good file transfer protocol.
Right. Yeah, especially for like 1440p 60 FPS video. That would be awful. But I haven't updated to the beta of Catalina yet. I'm still in beta 1 for Catalina. So hopefully that doesn't mess up our recording here. But so far it's been fine for me. And
so far the only recording problems have been at my end since my internet dropped out, and then I received a phone call because I forgot to go on Do Not Disturb. So, I mean, even if you do have a few problems, I'm still way ahead on the problem department.
Well, now that I've upgraded to Catalina, I've gotten more of a chance to play around with Xcode 11 and Swift UI, and I'm just completely blown away by how much easier Apple's made a lot of the more tedious parts of building an app. Unfortunately, I've been following along with a lot of their like talks from WWDC, and the developers giving demos and writing demo apps and stuff at WWDC are using like aspects of Swift UI that's not in the beta yet. So I can't even like follow along and build like a test app one-to-one with them because they're using like methods that aren't available publicly right now.
Oh, that must be frustrating.
Yeah, but it's been like a breath of fresh air as far as app development goes. It feels a lot more like building a web app with like a modern technology like React. So that's kind of nice.
Is there a timeline for when these features are coming along?
I would hope that this is, I mean, by fall. Like, hopefully it's coming at all, basically. But there's no, like, set date on these methods that we're using will be available in the betas.
3D Touch has made something of a comeback in beta 2 as well.
It's still really weird.
Still really weird, but supposedly just a bug.
Right. Yeah. So you can 3D Touch isn't completely dead now. You can 3D Touch on icons now, and it basically just speeds up what was your long press action. So if you 3D Touch quickly and release, it'll perform the long press action just in a shorter amount of time. there's still some really weird bugs that they need to work out with using long press everywhere. A common issue I've had is in the Shortcuts app. If I'm trying to rearrange my shortcuts, you press and hold for them to start jiggling, and you try to move it around, but it like has a conflicting where it starts jiggling, but then also immediately triggers what used to be the 3D touch action. So you can't actually move them around because this context menu pops up over them, and there's no way to not make that happen right now. So they still got some little pieces here and there to figure out exactly how it's going to work if they're transitioning completely to long touch.
And there are still some inconsistencies across devices. I mean, on my iPhone SE, which doesn't have haptic touch and definitely doesn't have 3D touch, I'm very curious to see what iOS 13 does. Like, does it bring the long touches? Say, for example, on the lock screen when you have a notification, on any modern device, you can hold your finger down, and regardless of if you've got haptic touch, 3D touch, or whatever, or even just on an iPad, if you hold your finger down on a notification, you'll get the quick actions, right? Mm-hmm. Doesn't do anything on an iPhone SE, so I am looking forward to maybe that doing something with iOS 13, and hopefully I'll have something to report back by the next show, because it is just annoying at the moment to have that inconsistency and to kind of forget when transitioning between two devices. Like, does the long press do something? Do I have to push it in further? Do I have to swipe on the notification instead, which is actually what you do have to do? Swipe and then tap view like an animal to get those quick actions.
I'm fairly confident that your SE will get these features, as long as there's not like a hardware like processor limitation, because the iPads now have every 3D touch, all the 3D touch functionality now is you can do it with a long press on iPad. So I would assume that means they can bring it to SE as well.
Yeah, unless it's one of those things where they kind of feature limit what they do on older devices, which has certainly happened in the past. Speaking of old devices, the original AirPods got audio sharing with Beta 2, which is nice. So I can't remember if we mentioned this in the last show, but I think we did question whether you had to have the latest AirPods to do like the Bluetooth splitter. But
right.
Yeah, you can, which is nice. So
yeah, that's surprising to me. I assumed that they were leveraging some Bluetooth 5 technology to do that. So
yeah, apparently not. As they said on AGP, which I thought was funny, instead of having we've gone from a simple Y cable with wires to having like 2 computers and 4 Bluetooth radios to achieve sharing audio between 2 people.
Yeah.
Beta 2 has also brought SMB file sharing and files, so that was definitely announced at WWDC, but wasn't in Beta 1. But
right.
Now it's out. It's going to be cool. I have a NAS at home. It has SMB. I'm not sure what I would use it for. Actually, I already use SMB, but I use it specifically in Fuse, which is an excellent video player app, which, as you know, the iOS can't play like MKV files natively, so in Fuse can. And I connect to the NAS via SMB, and it works pretty well flawlessly. But maybe my usage can expand to using the NAS for other storage things now that files will have it as well.
Yeah, I don't have any local use for SMB, but this is a big feature for a lot of people, and I've been surprised how in feature parity iOS 13 and iPadOS are, especially from the way they talked at the keynote. A lot of the features that they advertised is like, we're splitting this into iPadOS, and now look what the iPad can do, is actually just general features that all of iOS can do, which is great because there's just as much reason to need to manage files on your phone or anything else. But it does make me wonder exactly what the reason was for the different nomenclature, except for maybe plans in the future.
I was under the impression that iPadOS was basically just a marketing term, and at the back
Right.
end, there was really nothing that's changed.
Yeah, well, hopefully this means at least, and I've seen, this isn't an original idea, but I can't name the authors who have written about this, but that the idea of having this fork and calling it iPad OS means that the iPad will get stage time at every keynote from here on out, because it's another operating system that they'll have to address, and so there won't be. Feels like iPad has been kind of on a TikTok cycle where one year they'd get big features and the next year there wouldn't really be anything iPad specific added. And I think they've moved away from that with the new name.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
We already mentioned Apple TV getting picture-in-picture, which is cool and a big one.
Yeah.
Kind of unannounced, and then there it was.
I've never gone through the effort of putting a beta on an Apple TV, and I don't think I will this year either, but I'm curious to see exactly how the picture-in-picture functionality will work.
Yeah, because the remote isn't doesn't have that many functions on it. I wonder how you control over to the picture-in-picture to manipulate it. Actually,
Right.
Speaking of the controller, I think I mentioned in the last show that changing users via the control center was like a swipe from the right of the remote.
Right.
I think it's actually holding down on the menu button or something like that gets the control center.
Okay.
So I was totally wrong. They said something in the keynote and it opens the way you would expect it to, and I thought, well, naturally that's a swipe from the right, just like on Mac OS.
Right, especially with the animation that it came with, you'd think that it's a swipe on gesture.
Yeah, apparently not. The last thing that I wanted to note for Beta 2 was it has the new portrait lighting effects and controls, which were announced but didn't make it into Beta 1.
Right.
So the 3 people that use portrait lighting can enjoy that.
It's just as bad as all the other ones as far as keying things out correctly. Maybe even worse because the white background makes the edges more harsh and obvious.
Man, they really pushed this feature really hard. It was never good from day one, and it never got any better. Well, no. To be fair, it got marginally better over time, but it was never as good as they made it out in the ads. So maybe
Right.
they just had the perfect lighting situation to show off in the ads, and then, you end up having... You know how in the ads that they set up like that mini studio and then say oh, you don't need this, and then take it all away? Well, it turns out you actually do need the mini studio to make it look any good.
I wonder, does the Pixel have similar lighting features? I know it has a portrait mode equivalent, but does it do the keying out of the background stuff?
I couldn't say.
I'm just curious if the AI or machine learning layer would help a lot more with this. But, oh well, the portrait mode itself is pretty good.
Yes, portrait mode itself is really good. I agree. So the next post submitted by Healy Tech, who apparently also has a blog, is actually from Mac Stories and by Federico Vitici, who writes and uses iPads extensively. He's kind of, would you say he's the authority on iPads at the moment in the Apple News sphere?
Yeah, I think that's probably fair.
Okay. He actually had some time with Craig Federighi for his podcast, App Stories, I think it was. He was on a few podcasts, but App Stories is the one I think he interviewed Craig, and that was worth a listen.
Mm-hmm.
But he's taken to writing manifestos about the iPad, and he's written a really good article called Initial Thoughts on iPadOS, A New Path Forward. Mm-hmm. So I thought we could just use this topic as an excuse to talk about the features on the iPad, and as the owner of a brand new iPad, I assume you bought it brand new. You did, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
And is it running the beta?
Yeah, it's on beta 2.
I thought so. Okay. So, what are your impressions? Multitasking, multi-window.
Well, as far as multitasking goes, the core functionality is very similar, which I know was a question in the months leading up to this, with rumors of windowed app support, what that exactly meant. But it feels like they've just taken the existing multitasking features and like turned it up a couple notches. So now the swipe in app, you can multitask within itself to use, so you can quickly switch that app, which is great. Something I got from this article specifically that I hadn't figured out on my own yet is if you get a notification, you can drag that notification down to the side of your iPad and it'll open that app in a
No, really?
Yeah.
That was really desperately missing in iOS 12. I mean, every few months I would forget and wonder, can you move the notification into a slide over or into a position and try it and then be frustrated? So that is excellent to hear that piece of news.
Yeah, I'm excited to try that because I just got that out of reading this article. But everything else, I know I've said this on the show in the past, but like my iPhone layout is very much the first page is the standard iPhone layout, and then page 2 is just like a couple rows of folders with every other app I've downloaded on it. The new iPad with its condensed grid has taken my home screen down to just a single screen, which is great. And this single screen has the traditional apps in the layout, and then my folders, and also a column of widgets on the side, and it feels so much sleeker and more productive that way. Even though I really don't get much functional difference out of it versus having to swipe between a couple pages.
It's all about the looks, right?
I've been really happy. One of the features I forgot, this is an iOS 13 thing, but just having the new iPad Pro, I had totally forgotten that the second generation Apple Pencil, you can double tap while holding it to switch between the eraser and your writing utensil, which is super convenient. Yeah, I've enjoyed it. I don't know what else to say there.
Since you've got the Apple Pencil, do you ever make use of the feature where you can just tap the pencil on the lock screen to jump straight into a note? Because I always thought that was an excellent feature, but then in practice I never got around to using it.
Yeah, I haven't used it at all, even with my first and second generation iPad Pros, mostly because I don't use the stock Notes app for taking notes.
Okay.
I use Notability. And so it was not convenient for me. And I was in a situation where I wanted to quickly jot something down that was so urgent that I couldn't bother to open it and go to my preferred app. So, but yeah, it does sound like a great feature in theory.
That is one small niggle that still hasn't made it, is changing default apps for anything. And, iOS 13 was the address every annoyance release, and we didn't get that. So it seems to be that that's never going to come. One other question I have for you as a beta user, a real annoyance in iOS 12 is, say when you've got two apps side by side already and then you want to replace one and it's not in your dock, and instead of going home, what you can do if you've got a keyboard attached is to Command Space, type the name of the app, and then drag it out of the search results, all right, into a space. And on iOS 12, you can, with no keyboard, you can swipe down from the top of the screen and swipe right to go to Spotlight and search for the app, but you can't drag it from the search results into a space. Have they fixed that in iOS 13?
Ooh, that's not a use case I've ever tried. Give me 2 seconds, I'll have the answer for you.
All right. While you do that, I'll talk about a few other things that have come to the Files app, which is column view. I tend to be someone who just dumps everything in one huge folder and then relies on search to find things. I'm not going to be a huge user of column view, but that's a classic Mac Finder feature, isn't it? That never really made it to Windows in kind of any respect. PDF conversion straight from the Files app, cropping of photos straight from the Files app, and video rotation all in the Files app. So not only did video rotation come from photos, come to photos, but it's actually come to the Files app as well, which is just crazy because I don't even think that that was on Mac OS. Anyway, it sounds like you're back.
Okay, so walk me through this. I have the Mail app open. I'm going to swipe down from the top of the screen,
Uh-huh. Swipe right to get to like the widget view / spotlight.
Right, that doesn't exist anymore.
What?
So I swipe right and the widgets come in, but there's no spotlight.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
There's no search field at the top of the screen.
No. Let me try unplugging it from the keyboard and see if that makes a difference.
Uh-huh.
All right, the case is removed. Swipe down, swipe right. No, there's no search bar anymore.
Okay. I wonder how you're supposed to get new apps without going to the home screen.
You gotta buy the keyboard case.
You have to buy the keyboard. All right. Fair enough. I can live with that.
It's
That's
a really
fine.
nice keyboard. Although if I have one complaint over the keyboard folio versus the old smart keyboard cover, the smart keyboard covers you could fold backwards to have like a triangle base in the back of the iPad so it stands itself up.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the folio, there's no configuration like that. It's either open with the keyboard out or closed.
Oh, that's a shame. I guess you just have to buy the smart non-keyboard folio to get the triangle layout.
Right. It does offer the two different screen positions, so you can still kind of have the more standing upright. It just has the keyboard out in front of it, which is frustrating if you have like limited desk space and you just want to have a video up or something.
Right. All right. I was just going through the few other features that came to the Files app as well. Quite powerful, actually. You know, direct PDF conversion, cropping of photos, and video rotation all in the Files app. It's really nice to have that, especially if you're, at the moment to get a photo cropped, and it's in the Files app, you kind of have to get it into another app and then crop it and then get it back into the Files app, which is just a hassle. So,
right,
as someone who does that all the time.
Can you even do that on macOS?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the new Quick Look has those features.
Right, Quick Look, of course.
Actually, Quick Look, or just Finder. Does you know how in Finder when you've got the column view and you've got like the preview of the item that's selected, and then you've got the quick actions. I can't actually remember if that opens Quick Look when you try and use those quick actions or not.
So I do have the rotate option just right here within the column view, which is just not a view I ever live in. So, and there's a markup option which opens up the markup menu, but basically it's Quick Look with some more options, and that gives you cropping and everything else.
One of the other improvements that Federico points out in his article is the desktop Safari is a huge improvement over the previous kind of mostly mobile Safari that was on the iPad. And something that he notes, which I found interesting, is that so you know how like on the web with when you're navigating with the mouse pointer, like the hover and the tap actions are kind of two different actions which you can't really have on like a touch device.
Right.
Well, Safari actually uses heuristics to determine if a tap should act as a hover or a tap on a website. So I thought that was pretty clever. A clever way to implement it. So it looks at what the action would do to work out which it should do.
Interesting. That's very clever, and it's been a common problem. Ever since touchscreens were used to navigate the web, so that's kind of
cool. Exactly. Since day dot.
I think one of my bigger complaints with iOS 13 and was an exciting feature for people. I didn't know people wanted this, but at the keynote, people seemed excited. The ability to grab the scroll bar and scroll a page quickly by moving the scroll bar sounds neat in concept, but in practice, I'm constantly accidentally grabbing the scroll bar and then I'm shooting across the page when I'm trying to read something.
Is that because you're so used to scrolling the page just so close to the edge of the screen where the scroll bar is?
Right, because I try not to like overlap the content with my finger or anything, and so I scroll on the edge of the page. So I don't know what the solution to that is, if I'm just holding it wrong, or if
you're holding it wrong. Trademark.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind just turning that off, though, because I don't really have any specific cases where I care to grab the scroll bar and move precisely like that.
Yeah, it could be a learn thing. I imagine I'll keep it on just to see if I learn my way around it, and if I'm still flicking through pages accidentally after a few months, then that's when it's going to get switched off.
Well, hopefully it has a switch. I'm not even sure if that's possible, but yeah.
A result of getting desktop Safari is that you can kind of get picture-in-picture in YouTube. I wonder how long YouTube's going to allow that to fly.
I'm sure not for very long, which is extremely disappointing because even after all this time, even like paid YouTube Premium members on their app can't use picture-in-picture. So I'd love to see that functionality brought to the iPad.
It's so frustrating, isn't it? Nearly everything can do picture-in-picture. Even like Netflix and their little walled garden of limitations does picture-in-picture.
Yeah, this isn't for lack of trying on Google's part. This is them specifically blocking that feature from working.
Yeah.
Because they're so scared of people like being able to stream music without paying for their premium membership.
Is that what it is? I mean, there are ways around it. Just like stop the music video at the end instead of auto playing onto the next one, and then no one's going to use it as like a music streaming service.
Yeah. It's the same reason that they disabled like background audio playing unless you're a YouTube Premium subscriber. Because that used to work in the old YouTube apps, and then they launched their subscription service and they disabled another native feature. So,
well, I guess we're going to have to either use Safari to access YouTube. We'll see how that goes, or continue to put YouTube in a little split view, which is what I do when I want like picture-in-picture in quotes at the moment. Is just to have it like in the narrow column, and then keep using the iPad as regular in the other 2/3 of the screen. Ridiculous, but gets the job done.
Yeah. What a waste of space, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Something I've noticed, and I don't know if you've seen this or if this is targeted at me just because I recently bought another iPad. I've gotten Luna display ads everywhere. And in my opinion, it's because they're trying to get as many people to buy it as possible before Sidecar officially rolls out. But it could just be because I just bought an iPad.
No, I think they have kicked off a pretty heavy marketing campaign because I too have seen those ads everywhere.
Really?
Although, again, I wonder if they just look at the user agent of my browser and see it's an iPad and then target me. It could be that as well.
Yeah. Well, for one reason or the other, in my mind, they're just trying to sucker as many people into buying their product as possible before they are very soon obsolete.
To be fair, it does offer features that Sidecar doesn't offer.
I guess I'm not really familiar with what Luna Display offers, but
I haven't used it either, but from what I've read, you're not going to be running like a headless Mac with Sidecar, whereas you kind of could do it with Luna Display.
That's true. And Luna Display will be able to support older Macs that don't have the newer processors for encoding.
That's right, yeah.
Because they use some kind of dongle, I think.
Luna Display does, yeah. I think it's an HDMI dongle.
Yeah. So they'll have an audience for at least a little while longer.
The next topic is an article submitted by a Unix fan from Apple Insider. And it's an article called High-End Users on Why I'm Buying the New Mac Pro. So Apple Insider has taken it upon themselves to go and sample a number of pro users in all sorts of industries: photography, medical imaging, video production. There might have been a developer in there too. And it's basically an article full of anecdotes from these 4 segments. Actually, I think there are only 4 people on their impressions of the Mac Pro. And I think the takeaway we can take, the takeaway from this is summed up by Synonymous Shitebag, who says, "Would I be able to play Flappy Birds on this thing?" And no, you will not be able to, because the OG Flappy Birds was never on Mac OS, and it will never be on Catalyst either.
This really goes into depth what we just said in passing in the last show, which is that this machine is for such a narrow segment of people, and that all the people speaking negatively of it are not its target audience at all. And for those few people that are in the target audience, this is exactly what they've been waiting for a long time.
Interestingly, a lot of the people, a number of the people said that they're actually still running the previous trash can style Mac Pro as their computer. And some of them even said it's still going strong, quote, and they don't actually plan on updating because the last one is fine for them.
Yeah, I think, it's still a workstation class computer, and as long as you're not in a situation where you need the latest GPUs or 1.5 terabytes of RAM, the current generation Mac Pro is still a fine workstation computer, as long as you're not, doing like heavy rendering stuff or anything that requires the massive modern GPUs.
As long as you're not Adobe, who is apparently filling up racks full of these things.
That's right, yeah.
And is happy that they're going to be able to use regular server racks. Have you seen how these are going to fit into server racks? Are they going to sit on their side, or is there like a special modular case for them? I haven't seen anything to that effect.
There was like a brief clip in the keynote where they showed how they looked mounted, and it is a completely different case. It's got the vent holes on the top, and they mount in sideways. So I don't know if there's any pictures of that available online, but yeah, so it slides in on its side, and then it has vent holes on the top in the specific mounting designed case. Okay,
so that'll be a pretty sweet solution.
Yeah.
I think it was Adobe also mentioned that they do use these as kind of just hardware to run virtual machines, basically. So one of these spec'd up to its like top specifications will be able to run an absolute ton of machines virtualized.
Yeah.
Although they do comment that macOS in the user license agreement only allows you to run 2 virtualized copies of macOS per physical computer. So considering the absolute capability of these machines, you would hope that would be increased to like, I don't know, dozens at least.
I hadn't seen that. That's a scary thing. Like, that's something that's like, for some reason, if someone had it in their basement, they'd completely ignore that and run, their dozen VMs and be fine. But for a company like Adobe, who just has to live by those agreements because they're just under a stricter legal eye, that's a huge limitation of these machines right there.
Yeah, it just seems like a huge waste, potentially.
Or a company like Mac Stadium, who has thousands of Macs. I wonder how they're getting around that currently, because I assume even the iMac Pros and Mac Pros they have now are more than capable enough to run more than 2 VMs at a time.
Yeah, I wonder if they're even going with virtualization or if they're just running just as regular hardware.
Yeah, that's a good question as well. So, and speaking of the capabilities of the previous generation of Mac Pro, this announcement has actually made me start to consider the viability of the trash can Mac Pro as kind of a personal higher-end development machine, now that you're going to be able to start getting these on the used market for less than half of what they sold for. They're still extremely capable computers, and I'm not doing anything graphically intensive. So it's starting to seem like a really good option for development.
Yeah, right. Okay. Would you say there's going to be a flood of Mac Pros once this one comes out?
I don't know about a flood, but there's always been a steady stream of them on eBay. And I think with the announcement of the new hardware, I don't think the stream is going to increase, but they're going to be just worth less because there's newer hardware out there now.
Right.
The only drawback for me is that even now, if you were to go onto Apple's website and buy this trash can Mac Pro, it only has Thunderbolt 2. So you can't use the LG Ultrafine displays, at least not without a Thunderbolt 2 to Thunderbolt 3 adapter.
Right.
And then if you use that adapter, you can only use the 5K display at 4K. So I'd have to find some different display hardware than what I'd ideally go with.
What would a Mac Pro, the trash can, give you over like a 5K iMac? or an iMac Pro. Besides price, I guess, compared to an iMac Pro.
Right. Yeah, the Mac Pro itself, if you get like a used one, I can get for half the price of an iMac Pro right now. And as far as spec-wise, I think I can get one that outperforms or matches the iMac Pro. And then, even though it's limited, it still does have easier expandability. I can still get in there and put a bigger SSD in if I wanted to. I could still upgrade the RAM if I really wanted to. At least easier than taking the front off of the iMac.
Right.
So I just think at this exact moment in time, the performance to price ratio on this Mac Pro is actually really good.
Interesting. All right, you'll have to keep us updated on whether you end up getting one.
I'll probably wait a few months until it comes out. The new ones come out, but I will definitely be keeping my eye open.
Yeah. Once people actually start selling their old Mac Pros.
Yeah.
I'm still not sure there's going to be a flood. Actually.
Yeah, that's fair.
No, there won't be a flood. Just a price reduction, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
There was an interesting article during the week about the grill design on the Mac Pro and how it was actually developed for the G4 Mac, I think it was.
The G4 Cube, yeah.
The G4 Cube, yeah. But deemed to be too expensive at the time to be put into real manufacturing, but the design has come back all these years later
and
for this year's Mac Pro.
Like look at some pictures of the bottom of the G4 Cubes. They have a very similar design to them with the kind of 2 layers of grill. It looks very, very much like a Mac Pro.
I wonder if Johnny Ive's team has just got a folder of ideas that are deemed or titled too expensive, but maybe if we come up with a cheaper way of doing it in the future. And it's just stuffed full of ideas.
I'm glad it was just an expense reason. I hope it was just an expense reason. And this isn't actually coming out of a book that like Johnny thought this was a good idea, but Steve said it sucks, so we didn't do it.
Yeah. Moving on. Another public service announcement. It's posted by Hongjian Zero, who says you can now update WatchOS on your Apple Watch without your iPhone. So this is just one of a host of features that you can now do on your Apple Watch, and another step towards complete independence from your iPhone? Question mark?
Yeah, the first thing came to mind to me when I saw this is this feels like we're like not even a full step, like half a step away from Android users being able to use Apple Watch. Because if you've completely broken all dependence on your iPhone, either Apple would need to make the step of like creating an app or just allowing connection over Bluetooth or something to an Android phone, or there could just be a carrier step, because the way your Apple Watch currently works as a standalone device, at least a cellular device with the iPhone, is it has a virtual SIM card that's a clone of the SIM card in your iPhone. So theoretically, that could potentially be done by the carrier. They could clone a SIM card that's in an Android phone, and then you'd still get your phone calls and notifications over LTE. I'm sure there's some lockouts for that right now, but we're so close to that being a possibility that this is almost just a switch that Apple needs to flick for this to happen.
Yeah, there are definitely still some limitations just having the watch screen. It's like to go through a setup process, for example. But
right.
I mean, I imagine kind of how you set up a HomePod that's got no screen. That you just do it by like tapping in an iOS device that's already set up near the HomePod.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of do that with the watch already, but then it's kind of locked to that iOS device. Even just expanding that capability to the iPad, or I don't know, I'm not sure about iPod Touch if you can set up an Apple Watch, but
I wonder.
But yeah, I mean, if you could just use an iPad to tap your Apple Watch and then complete the setup process, and then it's more or less standalone. I could almost see myself getting rid of the iPhone. I mean, that's a crazy thing to say, but
Sure.
yeah, like a cellular capable watch. Apple always talks about like they try and like the device that they're designing, they're trying to make it. How do they describe it? Like do everything that the next class of device can do, and
Right.
for certain use cases, the Apple Watch can do everything that your iPhone can do. And I'm just talking about like navigation and messaging, and I mean you can look at your photos and like run tracking and that sort of stuff. So if your phone uses fall into these categories, then the phone can, the watch can pretty much take over from that. But yeah, it's still very much limited by having to have an iPhone to set it up, and then, like you said, sharing the eSIM with your phone as well. That would have to go completely independent and would probably rely on carriers heavily. I'm not even sure how you would set up a watch to have a cellular connection if that was like, for instance, your only cellular connection.
Right.
How would something like that work?
That almost have to be something the carrier would handle for you.
Right, yeah.
But it's interesting to me. I mean, it almost seems like a no-brainer. Like it's not often that Apple allows their devices to work with or outside of their ecosystem. But they seem to be opening up more recently with Apple Music on Android and with AirPlay and the iTunes Store on third-party TVs now. And the Apple Watch is, for most intents and purposes, the only option on the market. Google has seemed to lose interest in the wearable market. They haven't made any significant updates to their wearable operating system. There's not a standout Android Wear device on the market. There's some companies making them, but there's no standout product like the Apple Watch. And so I feel like if they were to open up, I think a lot of Android users would get the Apple Watch. And I think that's a big market for them that they should consider.
Just from my own observations, the smartwatch market seems to live in two segments at the moment. And one of them is just purely Apple Watch, and that's like the smartest smartwatch. But then there is this whole other segment which is just classic analog watches or digital watches, which don't look anything like a smartwatch. They just look like a regular watch, but then they do have either like a tiny display for the weather or just step tracking, and so they have Bluetooth in them, of course, to sync with whichever phone you have. And that seems to be the market for people who don't like the look of like an Apple Watch or like an entire screen on your wrist. They just want to have something that looks like a watch, but they also like to track their steps and maybe have a tiny smart display just for weather, which a regular watch wouldn't have any way of getting besides Bluetooth.
I've definitely seen these watches for sale, but have you actually like seen them out in the wild?
I've definitely seen, analog watches with like step counters and that on them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say if I were to divide the category in two, there'd definitely be just Apple Watch, and then I think I'd just lump like fitness trackers. There's a lot of people wearing Fitbits or like just like things that like bracelets that are connected. But I don't know if those are quite smartwatches.
Yeah, okay, that's probably a third segment then of watches that actually look like fitness watches, I guess.
Right.
Just back on when you're talking about maybe connecting it to Android. So what they've opened up so far is kind of in services on other platforms, Apple Music and Apple TV. But Apple Watch isn't really a service. It's not. It's a hardware product.
Sure. Well, here,
how do they make money by opening it up to Android besides just selling more watches?
Well, I think that's exactly what it is. For they could have, if they wanted to, limited AirPods to only pair with their devices, but they did also allow it to be paired with any Bluetooth device.
Okay, yep.
So you don't get quite the same convenience as you would pairing it with an Apple device, but it still works. And I think in the same way, you wouldn't get all the features that you have if you paired to an iPhone, but you still get notifications on your wrist, and you can still use the apps because the App Store is now native. So in my mind, those are similar things, but...
Yeah, there's just so much on the watch that still relies on you having an iPhone, doesn't it? So many of the apps and services and...
Right.
Yeah. I'd say we're a ways off. Maybe next year we'll have it at least pair with an iPad or a non-iPhone iOS device. Maybe
WatchOS 7 will be our, iOS 5 year, where you could set up the device entirely on the device and didn't have to rely on something else.
Yeah, you can use dictation to put in your Apple ID.
Yeah, they could work on the Scribble keyboard's actually pretty good for writing out quick messages, so you could definitely put a password in there.
And you can dictate your passwords on the Apple TV without a problem.
That's true. That works fine for me.
The last topic submitted by Gulab Jamunya is a post from 9to5Mac, which outlines the differences in a new Apple Store design, which prioritizes a straightforward shopping experience. I think this is a long-awaited design and potentially something that's come as a result of Angela Ahrendts leaving Apple a little while ago. But I would possibly describe it as a return to sanity. I mean, we're getting like a checkout line now, can you believe? So you can actually line up to pay for something instead of standing around looking lost as you do at the moment and just wait for someone to take pity on you and approach you and let you buy something. That's if you don't use the self-pay, but...
Yeah, I'm actually, out of all of the features going through the changes here, the checkout line was my least favorite change. I always thought that the experience of going in and just scanning it on your phone and walking out was excellent.
I'll give you that one. That's definitely true. My 2 points against are a lot of people don't know about the pay with your phone thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the second one is if you're not buying something, say if you wanted to return something, then you can use the express checkouts for that as well. Whereas you can't.
That's
do
something
that.
I haven't had experience with, but you've gone in multiple times with issues. So, and then the other thing that was always magical to me about an Apple Store before the self checkout option was that if you wanted something, you just walked up to any person and said, "I want this," and every single table in the store had a register that just popped open to process your transactions. Maybe just in my mind that made the Apple Store feel less like a store to me. And so I could see why they've shied away from it for so long.
How do you mean a register? Don't they just walk around with the handheld point of sale units?
Yeah, they do that. And if you're paying with credit card, I'm thinking like back when I was in a freshman in high school, and I would walk in with I don't know, $100 bill, and I wanted to buy some iPod case or something. Every display table has a cash drawer built into it. It's hidden into the side, and those will pop open at whatever table they're closest to while processing the transaction.
I guess I've literally never paid cash for anything at an Apple Store because I've never seen that happen. Yeah. I've certainly seen the magical receipt printers that just seem to spit a receipt out of any table.
Oh yeah, same thing. So, but that was always cool to me. I think the thing I'm most excited about change-wise is the much more sane approach to Apple Watch sales. It was always weird to me to walk in and then be in a glass case where you can look at them, but you can't touch them. And if you wanted to try them on, or you wanted to try out different band combinations to see what you're interested in, you could actually talk to someone and they'd open a drawer and pull out a display case for you to mess with. The fact that now their whole display has been shifted up and out in the open, you can grab the watches and try them on, and they've got bands and all the different case finishes and sizes just laid out for you to experiment with, is long overdue.
The whole watch under glass thing was the complete antithesis of Apple Store design, because they would do things like put screens on at such an angle that it encouraged people to touch the screen and move it to the right angle, and the devices are always out and they're just begging to be picked up and handled. And the original designers knew that this is part of the process of getting someone to fall in love with and then buy the device.
Right.
And then the Apple Watch is just like under this piece of glass. You can look at it and tap on the glass, and it's like it was there to be appreciated, not to be purchased.
I think it went along, or played a lot into Apple's original marketing strategy for the watch, which was this is a expensive luxury fashion piece to be like oogled but not touched, and especially when they had $10,000 or $15,000 watches on display in there, it could make more sense than to put a piece of glass over it.
Yeah, because at that point you could just steal the watch, and even if the software was useful, you might be able to get some precious metals out of it.
Oh yeah, yeah. So the fact that they've completely pivoted on their marketing for the watch, I think, goes hand in hand with this. Yeah, and I just really appreciate being able to try different bands with different case sizes and everything. That's always been my biggest frustration, especially when the fourth or Series 4 came out, trying to figure out exactly what I wanted. But being able to play with it's going to be nice.
And the early pictures are showing that the watches aren't even secure to anything. They don't even have like that little security wire, which kind of gets in the way as you try and do anything. It's just kind of sitting there on its little chrome charger-looking device, just begging to be picked up.
I know that I read an article like a year plus ago that said Apple was getting rid of the security cables on everything because they wanted people to be able to fully try the device, like slide it in their pocket and see how it feels in there and all of that. And I've seen that in some places. In some places, I definitely still see the security wire. Like even one of these photos in the 9 to 5 Mac article, the iPhone display stands look like they clearly have security wires on them still. But there was a point in time, and it's been a while ago, that Apple specifically tried to make a push to remove those as much as possible.
Yeah, thinking back to my local Apple store, I think there have been times with and without. I can't remember what the current procedure is. If I had to guess, I would say that there aren't security wires on anything, though.
Yeah. Like, looks like the iPhones in this article, the only thing they have the security wires. And actually, I'm trying to...
Maybe there's like a theft metric that they measure to determine whether they need to put security on things.
Yeah, well, yeah, because even like the iPads they have out for the glorified price tags with the model and price numbers, none of those have the security wires on them. So,
speaking of pricing and model numbers, the new approach is, instead of just like dotting phones around with seemingly no labels, they actually group dissimilar models together, so you can easily compare like the 3 different iPhones that you can buy, and the price to some degree is written on a piece of paper in front of it.
Yeah, this seems like the most common sense thing of all. The fact that you could go into an Apple store and they have one table of 10s Max and one table of 10s, and then the other side of the store is the table of 10R. For someone going in there who really had no idea about what their current lineup was and just wanted a phone, that could be frustrating. So this makes a lot of sense to me as well.
They haven't been so bold as to put like the final the outright purchase price of the phone so in front of them. It's more of a if you buy this on a repayment plan, it'll cost you as little as ...
Right. Yeah, it's only what, $700 if you trade in iPhone 7 or newer.
Yeah.
So.
And even cheaper with your firstborn child.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think overall I'm happy with this. I was surprised how many people were frustrated with the way Apple stores had, or the direction they had gone in the last few years under Angela. There seemed to be a lot of hate for her in the comments.
Yeah, I wouldn't group myself in like the Angela haters basket, but I was often frustrated visiting an Apple store and just seemingly being ignored by everyone. You can't make the mistake of asking for anything at an Apple store, I found. You just have to wait and look as lost and hopeless as possible and wait for someone to come up to you.
Right. I think the trick is, and sometimes this isn't an option if the door person's gone, but if you go in and you know, like, what you need is going to require assistance because it's not just something off the shelf or anything like that. My experience has always been that there's someone at the door of the Apple stores asking if they can help you. And then you say, like, I need this. And like, oh, okay. And they put you on a list. And then an employee comes, gets you when the next one's available.
Oh, the dreaded list. Once I went in to try and buy something and it was like a 20-minute wait on the list. And
really?
At that point, I stopped asking the front of house person.
There's definitely some things that need to be fixed there. And I think they tried to achieve that with the self-purchase stuff. And maybe it's just not enough people comfortable with it. So
yeah, no, I think the queues is going to address like a huge percentage of the complaints about the Apple Store.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are always things that can be improved, like wait times at the Genius Bar, and it's often area by area. Like if you've got a busy store, if you've got lots of stores in the area, if everyone travels from like 3 hours to get to your store, all these factors can have a huge difference on your individual perception of the Apple Store. But
right.
Yeah, having a checkout line sounds crazy, but I think it's going to work pretty well.
What I see, just looking at the poster for the queue here, is it says it's specifically for buying accessories. So it seems to be for purchasing the same things you can purchase just with the app itself. But for the cases where you're like, I need someone to go get me an iPad, you're still going to have to wait around for someone to do that.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. Because they are never going to have boxed products of the actual devices on display. That would just look ugly. It would not fit the aesthetic of the store, would it?
That's completely right. It has to be aesthetic because they're definitely not worried about theft with how many devices they have out at all times.
Exactly.
But at least this express accessory checkout lane will hopefully clear those people out faster so the other employees can get to people who actually need help, sooner.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that angle. Anything more to add on the Apple Store changes?
No, I don't think so. I hope they don't get rid of some of the programs Angela started. I think turning at least the bigger Apple stores into more of a community center with like lessons on photography or programming, that's a cool, uniquely Apple experience that I hope they don't get rid of anytime soon.
Yeah, and all the nice greenery throughout the Apple stores, at least some of them.
Yeah.
It's a nice touch.
I know when I've been bored in the past and walked by an Apple store, sometimes I'll go in and I'll sit in on like their intro to Swift Playgrounds class just to see what their lessons look like. And I've always enjoyed that. So
yeah, I should go and try out some of the photography ones to see what sort of level they're at. I mean, they're on photo walks where you actually get out of the Apple Store and walk around with a real photographer. Could be cool.
Yeah, that sounds really neat.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
So unfortunately, my stores are too small for that kind of stuff. But yeah, I'd definitely be interested in trying that if we had it and I lived closer than 2 hours away.
All right. Well, I am James VDM on Reddit and on Twitter.
And I'm Jellywoot on Reddit and Twitter. I'm also running the Catalina beta now. So, fingers crossed there's no issues. I've already encountered my first one, though.
Which is?
They've completely dropped support for 32-bit apps.
Uh-huh.
So I can't run Audacity, which is my usual recording software.
Oh, okay. So what are you recording in this time?
I'm trying out QuickTime.
Yeah, that's what I always used to record in, so you should be fine.
Okay. The only issue I've seen so far is that it only records it as like a left track. So it's going to have to be mixed to mono or whatever before.
Yeah, it's always mixed to mono, so that shouldn't really matter.
Okay, great.
I don't think it'll have any loudness issues. Well, actually, I have no idea. I've got no idea about audio. I definitely shouldn't be running like a podcast. Yeah.
Well, you have more experience than me.
Really?
So.
Well, maybe more experience, but definitely not more
putting this show together.
Definitely not more like I don't have an ear for it like you. Like you sometimes send me feedback like, oh, I don't know, you use like audio words. I heard this in this show.
I use audio words.
And I'm just thinking, I listened to the whole show like 3 times to edit it, and I didn't hear that at all.
Well, I was so impressed by how you were putting the show together at all, because in my head, the way you'd put together a podcast is you'd have the 2 audio tracks and you'd line them up as best you can, and then you'd play every single like whatever phrase or sentence that someone says, and then find the perfect time to cut it, and then adjust the other person's track so that their response sounds like as fluid of a conversation as possible, and go through that and do that for. I figured it'd take hours. I said, "There's no way that James can do this overnight." That's why I was so worried about recording the night before. But then you're like, "No, I just have a tool that does it all for me." I'm like, "Well, I'm glad that you did this and not me."
Yeah. Yep. The wonders of Ferrite. I mean, it's such a good app. But a lot of apps do this. Actually, not many on iOS though, but certainly on desktop. But on Ferrite, you just say like, "All right, trim the silence and now squash everything together," and it nearly always works out perfectly, except for the last show, which was an absolute disaster to edit. That was. I think it didn't sound too bad in the end, but God, that was a.
Oh, with Christian, it was bad.
That was an effort. Yeah. Well, I'm not sure if this is a bug in Ferrite or if it's just me, but every now and then. Specifically on my audio, which is why I think it's probably me, but it just like it loses the end of every sentence that I say, so I have to like recrop every segment of audio. So that's a hassle to start with, compounded by Christian's audio. I'm not sure what it was, but there seems to be some sort of corruption with the file, and it was just nothing on iOS could read it. Everything I tried to use would fail to open it or open it, and then failed at exporting it. And I was kind of stuck, because I was traveling and I didn't actually have a computer with me. So I sent this to you. I actually provisioned a virtual machine in Microsoft Azure to get the file there, to run it through Audacity, just to transcode it to another format, which I hoped would like solve this file corruption problem, and it did. So then I FTP'd it out back to like a web server and then download it again on my iPad and then edit it in Ferrite. But I mean, that was like a multi-hour process. So, and I was like on holidays and been like stuck in the house all day and also trying to work. And yeah, I think I got out of the house for the first time at like 8 p.m. that night. It was a good day.